Okay, once again, I'm going to do this again. Anyway, yeah, I wanted to mention real quick while I'm thinking about it. I'd mentioned it before, but something about the drum shop, a place where I used to buy like predominantly my drum heads and drumsticks, and occasionally, something percussion, like a cowbell or a chime or obviously a cymbal. But yeah. So anyway, the drum shop there at Chimney Rock, and I just mentioned, and I had to start over and get the brightness on adjusted there. But anyway, yeah. So Chimney Rock, where it went to, I'm not real sure. And I'd mentioned that I think it was Gessner actually, but I'm actually thinking if that was really maybe the thing about uh, of what availability meant to being like in the immediate area during. I mean, if all that was like an intellectual duration, something duration of intellectual representing a lifespan of what that means as a even a principle of like international law of having fair use of access easements. Even the thought of like what royalties means in that way based upon the fact about what royalties are about involving intellectual property. Yeah, so in any case, yeah, so anyway, like around the Houston area, and that was one that I mean, how could I not notice? I mean, like the drum shop was like right there at Highway 59, known as the Southwest Freeway, and Southwest automatically in my mind automatically is like a 247-degree thing now. What was then, not even significant or even thinking in any kind of way of what I'm referring to now. But yeah, so like the drum shop's there at Highway 59 and Chimney Rock, and I believe the name had switched. I think it was Gessner, but like I say, it's kind of like thinking about the Fondren and deal about Bissonnet. And I was thinking about well the Gessner deal is kind of like a almost like putting the thought into question, with just the pronunciation of Gessner. And it may have thoroughly been that something of a the before, during, after of proper English numerical composition. How true it is, I'm not really sure, but I noticed that because Chimney Rock had changed his name, and that happened like my name is Wade, and it was like on, I mean, there's many people named Wade, but the thing is that I noticed that, okay, but it's like on the west side out in Bunker Hill area. Actually, the area I bought my first drum set way back in, I think it's like 1979, I think, a Ludwig pipe is, yeah, out in that area, and yeah, and then like years later, like in I think it was like after 1999. It may have been like before, right in that, give or take 2 or 3 years maybe. So when I think I remember noticing it moved to the east side of I-10, out by a reservoir in the San Jacinto area. Um, yeah. So anyway, yeah, out by a reservoir. Yeah. So yeah. So in any case, it seemed to be the deal, like with the drum shop and me driving by, and when it was there, Univision at first was not there at the corner of like Highway 59 and West Loop 610. Although the Houston Post really was. And then Univision moved in there. I know it's predominantly a Spanish speaking, according to only what I've seen and heard. Not that I've actually been there, but I've driven by there many times. Going to the drum shop, getting like normally a Black Dot Remo drum head back in the 80s, which seems to be there had been a lot of things going on, pretty much so after the William Jefferson Clinton Al Gore thing, and my thing about the Malcolm Paul, with Chevy Chase, seemed to have some like significance, unlike any other. But yeah, so and then the George Bush administration came in, and there'd been a lot of changes going on. Well, anyway, yeah, in that way, I was thinking that from the Remo Black Dot drum, and when all these things were going on, and I was noticing several things that seemed to be like an alignment in the parallel universe. I mean, it's really like an A-row situation of like a design, specifications, and architecture. Very much so, a deal of perception of like many songs like throughout the 80s that when I was like going through a circuit. I mean, the deal about it seemed to be like dimensions of a room that I was in, and I just decided like I'm not going to just like sit there and do nothing, right? So I was like looking at the architecture. I mean, it seemed to be the natural thing. I was like doing sit-ups. I mean, all day and night while doing this, before, during, and after. Looking at the wall, and it's kind of like the first song. It was one of the songs that I had heard. Um, um, uh, by Rad, as a matter of fact, a rock band in the '80s, and the Put You on the Shelf thing. And when I walked in the room and looked at what kind of shelf is that, But anyway, it was kind of like it had the triangles. I was already onto like the pyramid and the triangle, and the two triangles has like the shelf, bracket deal when it shape of triangle and alignment deal, and like the Ozzy Osbourne song. The believer and take another point of view. It's kind of like all this stuff is going on in my mind. And I just started doing what looked like some like alignments on the wall based upon just the vision and all that. And it seemed to be the whole entire deal about the wall. It's like the alignment. I mean, really, in like a five-dimensional triangle, kind of eccentric in that way. And some deals about what would normally be seen on TV is like UFO sightings in the field, leaving impressions. Um, that way, yet that of like a northwestern direction based upon the circular curve side, like looking like kind of like an arrow, yet with two, like like what would be like a intersecting axis at a 90-degree angle, yet completely the exact opposite of the circle, yet of knowing that the intersecting circular value would present a 90-degree that way of the axis, like kind of like looking at the Audi deal about knowing that it would be like three intersecting axes about it. Yeah. So anyway, like that's like kind of like on a wall, and it seems to be like some deal with alignment in the parallel universe, ultimately getting to my thoughts of what like a 90-degree would look like on a wall of some practical application of symbolic representation that it seemed to be like a UFO sighting deal in a way. The circles like landing in the field, yet at a combination of the same value of circles, yet at the 90-degree thing about it, yeah, and the intersecting axes that way. Yeah, so I mean, it's just like happening the way of the alignment and available information, even a calibrated styrofoam cup. Anyway, so like I was thinking about that. Anyway, let me get back on the drum shop. Yeah, so like it seemed to be like the deal about the arrow thing about it seemed to be like a lot about the circuit at the same time, but doing a lot of sit-ups and push-ups and like studying, looking at all that architecture, platform, and embedding encryption, thinking about all that stuff there and color code that way. But yeah, so anyway, like seemed to be like the thing about the perpendicular spiral in a way. Likewise, in addition to the design, uh-huh, very much so two-dimensional perception, but based upon experience. And what really seems to be the issue between like a telekinetic issue, like maybe academic of telepathic, or mental telepathy minus God, maybe academic, but maybe not the experience of the thing about it, and the deal about the night vision of Abraham Lincoln and the hood ornament that way, like an RCA mascot, representing like the telekinetic role of the pen, as compared to the deal about national security, suggesting information provided with telepathic communication would be maybe only the impression maybe of maybe the academics, but not necessarily the experience of the real deal about it. But and to me, that's what the telekinetic role of the pen really suggests in that way, and how my thought of how Corvette is involved that way. Chevrolet Corvette, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So like I include that. But anyway, there's like a deal about the perpendicular spiral and design on the outside, like the concrete rail on the Gulf Freeway, south side of Houston on I-45 Gulf Freeway, and it looks like a waveform, almost like Spanish, like above the N kind of wave, kind of pi r squared, symmetrical, asymmetrical, what pi r squared would look like. Had like two little lines above it and below it, with like a complete one cycle of like oscillation, yet divided. Anyway, yeah. So like anyway, it's kind of like a wave with a dot. It's almost like Morse code, really. It's got a little wave, one complete cycle, looking like a wave of measuring cycles per second oscillation, and with dots in between it. But like at a 90-degree, it would look like it looks like a two-dimensional perpendicular spiral. But yet at a 90-degree, it would look like a circle on a dot. The same thing of like even the Statue of Liberty or a pylon, or absolute values that go through algebra and calculus on in quantum, of a pylon, or the thought of maybe even a Native American telepathic teepee, and what that is to the 13 stars above the eagle. I mean, for real. And Austin Powers, thing about the Blue Bonnet and Paralegal, yeah. Or the Native American Indian that way of what the implementation of what reservation is, or having a right to assemble all he means in aggregates, of international monetary funding, as well as like M1, M2, and M3 of like Um, oh God, yeah. Monetary, domestic, and gross national product. But anyway, I was like thinking about that quite a bit. But anyway, it's kind of like the two-dimensional design on the outside of Gulf Rail on the south side. It's very simply perceived as a two-dimensional surface. A flat plane, yet with a 90 degree, it'd be like a perpendicular spiral of like signal processing of attenuation and electronic power. Yet same a circle with a dot that would present, even the deal about the spiral notebook, or even the thing about a football, or a spherical quadrant, and like globalization and Abraham Lincoln, the pi squared of the deal about the rectangle on the hood ornament on the Lincoln Continental, ultimately getting to the pi square, and like global positioning systems of like satellite and orbiting around the Earth, or like coordinates and all that stuff with the square and the pi square deal about symmetrical, asymmetrical stuff like that. Well, anyway, I was like looking at that about that design, because it seemed to be like the perpendicular spiral seemed to be something like significant in my mind, having been certain places at certain times and noticing the signal processor. It's like beyond. It's almost comparable. Same principle of a perpendicular spiral of like a medical technology. Presents that in chemistry. Yeah, in a signal processor, it kind of like it's almost like a psychoacoustic going beyond the parameter of what would normally be the idea of controlling waveform, or even peaks and crests in measuring cycles per second oscillation based upon like spectrum and frequency of peaks and crests. Yet limiter, expander, and compressor are the three mandatory minimum requirements really for cranking it really up, and an easy 20 to 50,000 watts with a limiter, expander, and compressor, thoroughly presenting peaks and crests from distorting the quality of volume and sound that way. And that's what that's all about, is having the amplitude and the loudness and all that, and the clarity is the big deal about controlling peaks and crests that present the distortion issue. Almost representative schematics likewise as resistance, as like the impedance of like resistors representing schematically the peaks and crests of resistance, which happens to be the nano luminance of the pastel red of night vision. Likewise, the ambience providing a constant on the positive side of a capacitor of an overflow, maintaining a constant on the positive side, as compared to what might be categorized as maybe controlling an over amount or an overabundant amount of might represent alternating circuit, yet not a peak and crest, but yes, the same in a more controlled, not but in any case, yeah, so like that's where rectification comes in several different ways. Even like with generators of like high-rise buildings, and the converting mathematics when a generator has no longer a need to calculate and present values in wattage, and goes beyond with the conversion into only electrical, is the deal about the generator and high rises. Yeah. So anyway, I was kind of like looking at that, but anyway, it's like going to the drum shop. Okay, let me get back on the thing here about the drum shop. Is that when I was going there, is that RemoBlackDot was predominantly my color of noticing like a black dot on a map even back then, but it no connectivity. None whatsoever of like really what I'm talking about now. That was like back in the 80s, but really since like June of 1992, progressively more and more, and now this year being the year 2023. That way, September 2023. Yeah. So anyway, and now it's kind of like the drum shop had, I think it's like somewhere around the year 1999 is when I noticed it, because there was a lot going on, and the drum shop was no longer there at ChimneyRock and Southwest Freeway, Highway 59. And the thing of it is that that predominantly I thought that ChimneyRock is even like the night vision of Abraham Lincoln in that way. Like chimneys are normally rectangle in many homes until you get to like the 18-hole golf course, and even still most of them are. Some are kind of like staggered off. Like some might represent almost like a rocket shape, really, based on the bricks being staggered and like steps. And in any case, yeah. So so I was thinking about that with the deal about the pi squared and what that is to even to it's kind of like talking about that. But I want to get back on my whole entire point for this part right here is about the drum shop and the thought of a little bit of humor about the tribe of Judah, and predominantly of the musicians. And the thing of it is that that's all I've ever really known. But now there's information being thrown like involving like the tribe of Levi, and automatically my thing is like with the Levi 501 button up blues, yeah, blue jeans, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So button 501, the button 92 Pentagon drummer and thing about the or like still and all principle of like levitation, and my thought about the amphibious thing about J. Edgar Hoover, yet even the deal about the Lord Jesus Christ at Mount Olives, and it being a plateau for Purple Mountain's majesty thing about my thought of what it would be, the fruited plain, or the toucan saying fruited plateau plain, yeah, but not really. Not in any case, yeah. So there's a little humor about some above the fruited plain still, and it being the detour. Yeah, it's kind of almost like a backwards. Fruited would be almost like the detour. Yeah, it's amazing. Anyway, let me think about that again. But anyway, before I actually leave it at that. But anyway, yeah. So like now there's like Aquarian like power white dot drums, and it seemed to be the deal about my thought and memory. Like when I was driving by, and Univision wasn't there at first when I was going to the drum shop, out there. I live in Pearland, okay. But anyway, so in any case, so like the deal is that Univision wasn't there. Then it was like built there. And Univision is like going to get the drums head, and it seemed like I noticed it, and it's just really the insignificance of not even having a need to think anything about it except glancing as I drove by. And I think I noticed that they used like 4 pastels, and I'm pretty sure if my memory serves me correctly, it was like 3 pastels and a white. And my thing about it now seems to be the Harris, Egypt, and Union about the alphanumerics of pastel and the history of a television screen and Technicolor, and what that is too in the 3rd and 4th generation of like Wyatt Earp and John Wayne, and the deal about the hop thing is the deal about it, yeah. Seemingly so, yeah, about the obviously even the deal about some humor. But once again, now back to the Aquarian power white dot. It seems to be like the deal of the thing about an Aquarian being actually amphibious as compared to what might be considered the thought of like beyond, maybe agreed beyond an internet protocol of a local area network or LAN. My thought once again, the local area network being LAN or LAN, or the L12 and A1 being 13, and the N14 is like once again it's like the M is in and the alphanumerics of 55. And back to the Shazbot 909 of like Robin Williams and Mork and Mork, and Mork and Mindy and Pam Dauber thing about the Shazbot 909, ultimately getting to Robin Williams years later in the movie Bicentennial Man and the Oracle Corporation in Redwood, California. And some information that seems to be, significant to the 13-band graphic equalizer of like the Shazbot 909, because the 909 deal is the only two of like the pastel red and the pastel green of night vision measured in nano units that way. And it seemed to be even a big deal of like night vision of the 6-point star, the Deep Star 6, a maritime law, as well as beyond the front lines of the beach right, and amphibious in a way of like the code blue and the absolute values of like algebra all the way through calculus and to quantum that way, and what the algorithm is during before, during, and after. But anyway, yeah, so it seemed to be like, the Israeli flag and the Star of David, and the horizontal bars above and below the code blue, the 6-point star of Lake Israel, and the blue and purple bird thing about the same thing, what Deep Star 6 means to a bird, of like the Israeli blue and purple bird being alphanumerics 128, and Zion being 1,000 years apiece that way. Or thought of Zion being that with the combination alphanumerics of the blue and purple bird, being a deal, like purple being 88, as well as like California, and the New Deal Act of Roosevelt. Okay, and the thing about between Theodore and like Franklin Roosevelt, and what the New Deal Act is to 64 and HCTP and American and Israel. Likewise, the New Deal Act being 88. That way, even the blue being 40, yet significance of the sky, amongst other factors, even certain parts of colors of the the ocean, on a clear day that way, and the purple being 88 in California, Mormon, and all the connectivity about the color of the bird is really the bird. And the thing of it is that like really even in Deep Star 6, the blackbird, and the movie would like if it's the deal about listed and Yul Brynner, the Pharaoh deal about the pagan idolatry involving the black crow and what a statue is, even a statue or escrow, seem to be ultimately getting to a color code of Deep Star 6 and what that is to an equator in the way of like above and below what a degree level is to um, only opportunity, if that only suggests what intellectual property of having fair use of lifespan would only suggest to maybe a degreed or non-degreed issue, or maybe even a degree, the deal about rectification of the way it really is, and electrical power rectifying, even electrical to electrical, controlling, it that way, even on the dissipating side of a negative, of atmospheric, even lightning, But anyway, yeah. So the deal about it seems to be like the significance of the color code of like a night vision in the way, all the connectivity and all the color codes. I mean, it's all there. And the deal about the Aquarian is it's like the MSN, the Aquarian, the aquarium is amphibious in a way of like even a principle of like re-entering heaven from Mount Olives of a plateau. I mean, for real. And even the intersecting axis representative of like what is the fish of like a Christian religious deal of like some symbolic representation that is given the impression of the fish thing. Yet at the same time, intersecting axis of measuring cycles per second and oscillation. Um, even the intersecting axis of Audi in the way. Um, I mean, ultimately it gets to that, and in my mind that way. But the thing is that I was wanting to focus on because it's already gone on 21 minutes, right at 22 minutes here, like right now, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So I wanted to stay on that because the drum shop, after it had been left, and Univision was still there, and I was like driving by, and then when I noticed that drum shop was no longer there, I was like going to the Guitar Center, and the Clear Lake, Texas area, annexed by Houston, the NASA thing, about command control, with like the space shuttle and the color code, even of a holy seagull and alphanumerics likewise, with the 2L thing about the spelling of seagull being alphanumerics is 77, or, really ultimately even getting to the tennis court and Vantage Love 30 and all that stuff about, marginal spread and terminology and New York Stock Exchange and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, so like anyway, I wanted to say that because my thought about I don't mean to sound like a promiscuous tambourine with a cover charge at a Tribe of Judah Jubilee or a antisocial drumhead, but it seems to be the thing a little bit about humor, that way of even the IBM thing of like the plenipotentiary, the potentiometer, and the alphanumeric analytical linguistic and practical application and principle of IBM seems to be ultimately getting to the exponential quotients of like power, and likewise a plenipotentiary in a way being a circle of volume, and more so of the dial in that way. But it seemed to be the deal about that in many ways that it represents my thought of like spectrum and bandwidth that way. Of just the acronym IBM itself, it's my thought of automatically a bandwidth and spectrum deal of a plenipotentiary of exponential quotients, likewise a potentiometer of volume representing what's beyond the pi or square factor, the circle, and even the Fred Flintstone thing, about the wheels and the wheel of fortune seem to be like the pi or square deal of Fred Flintstone. Not so prehistoric that it rules out JavaScript, right? Or predicted estimate options and futures is, right? So anyway, yeah, so like I wanted to include that real quick because my thoughts about the aquarium and the MSN, the aquarium, power white dot drum head was my thing about it because that's really what I used anyway now. Yeah, but my thought was a little bit of humor about that. Got some oceanfront property in Arizona. Or is it a Freddie Prinze Chickle Stick Society? Got some oceanfront property in Arizona. If the drum major control that, I'll throw in the roto toms in for free. And what all that processing, and Reader's Digest is, some academics and, yeah, for real, some like replacement, and some real smart. So get smart, get Maxwell smart. It's kind of like, and pile, and all that good stuff. Yeah, I've been to a summit meeting. Yeah, and another qualifying round of applause and standing ovation. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So like, yeah, all right. So all right. Well, there it is. It's already gone on 25 minutes and like 13 seconds, and I'll stop right there for now. Okay.